Hello, Marblehead, and welcome to Up for Discussion, a program where we explore the issues that you are talking about around town. Our panel for October, on my far left, is Chris Stevens, the editor of the Marblehead Reporter and wickedlocal.com. To my immediate left is David Olson, the editor of the Salem News. And Will Dowd, who is the assistant editor of the Marblehead Reporter, and Joanne Mayer, a former member of the Board of Selectmen. On the front burner, the Mariner heads into some strong winds. The assisted living project on Pleasant Street was before the Board of Appeals recently, but because of a surprisingly large and loud crowd, the meeting was recessed until the end of this month and moved to the high school. Will, you covered the meeting, so tell us what went on.
Yeah, so it's actually according to our town planner, Becky Cutting, she said that it was the largest crowd that a planning board or a ZBA meeting has ever had before. So that kind of just tells you right off the bat how much interest there is in this project. One of the words that I said was some of the words that I thought of, or some adjectives that I thought of whenever I was thinking about before coming here, was people were tense. They were kind of pouncy. They sort of wanted to learn. They were eager to learn more information. But as we all know now, they had to shut down the meeting before they could even get a word in or start any conversation.
So town officials were surprised by the turnout.
They were.
And there was no AV, right? Weren't they saying they couldn't hear anybody?
That's right. They did not have any.
And then the issue came. They were like 2 or 3 deep around the walls, weren't they?
They were, yes. People were outlining the wall of the space.
So all of the chairs were filled, people were all around, and somebody wanted to know if it was a fire hazard.
That's right. They did. They did want to know. They did.
Where was it? The community center?
It was the community center on Humphrey Street. And it was in the Marblehead Council on Aging's dining room. So they had originally moved it to from Abbott Hall to the dining room to actually accommodate a large crowd that they thought was going to come, and they got a larger crowd than they thought initially. So, yeah.
So it's been moved. So what was the mood? I mean, you described several things, but
people have in recent, I would say probably about a week before the meeting, you started to hear some not negative things, but some concerns that people were having, about increased traffic that the development project might have, some noise pollution that could come about once the project's finished. And also some people were actually handing out packets that said that they were worried about a devaluation of their properties if the project comes into fruition. Yes.
So there are 3 different leaflets out there. None of them signed, I guess. Is that
No,
right?
no, as far as we know. Nobody's put their name down.
Marblehead concerned concerned Marblehead residents, and so those packets were being handed out during the meeting.
But do we know who they are?
No, we don't.
Of course not.
Okay. So
No one has stepped forward to claim.
ownership of the opposition?
Yeah, exactly.
There were people there, though, that had sign-up sheets as well. They had some sign-up sheets, so there was some organizing going on.
One of the things that I was wondering about is that I was there, I was in the audience, and you didn't hear much from people who are proponents of it. And do you think it's just because they were getting the read and thinking this isn't gonna be finished? And
Maybe.
Yeah.
I was surprised. I was completely blown away when he told me what the tenor of the room was. I did not expect that sort of outcome. I did not expect to hear so many people against the project. It just seems like a great project.
And I think generally in rooms like that, situations like that, the opponents outnumber the supporters.
Yeah. Definitely louder. I think they're definitely louder.
In kind of enthusiasm or anger, as the case may be.
No, I just think that there's a lot of misinformation in terms of what the residents' part to this whole process is. The residents have a piece and that they can come in and tell what their concerns are, and the zoning board listens closely, and if there are legitimate concerns, then they may put them into the eventual conditions, they call them, and it's part of the zoning board permit. And those conditions can be things like screening for trees to a project, or if the road isn't wide enough, maybe they think, and they might think, well, maybe that's got some merit and they could make the road wider. But the reality is that our zoning bylaw provides for this kind of a facility.
Exactly.
And the only things that they haven't done, it's already been, it's fulfilled the requirements that a project like this would need. They haven't finished the traffic survey, which they don't anticipate is going to be a big issue.
No, I don't
So
think
the residents have no vote. They're not going to be able to say, we don't want this and it can't happen, because it's already been decided by the town meeting that this sort of a facility is something the town wants and needs.
I'm sorry, I think you're absolutely right. I think the larger picture here is being missed, is that there's a great need for assisted living facilities. Something like the population of people from 65 to 74 is going to double from 2010 to 2030.
Yeah.
They're going to have to live somewhere, and as we know in Marblehead, a lot of these houses are not fit to be adapted for people who are in their 70s and 80s.
I think it's really a shame that today, if somebody needs assisted living, they really have to move out of town, don't
That's
they?
right. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no,
unfortunate.
yeah, there's not really
We've
any
been
place.
saying ever since we lost the proposal on Salem Harbor on Marblehead side, isn't that a shame?
Yeah.
We really need something like this, and this is a perfect location, and I'm dumbfounded, frankly, because of my age, too. I can understand what the need for it, but I still think it's part of a community to have this type of thing.
Do you think there would be more acceptance if they scale it down? Like, I'm thinking maybe if they put conditions on it, it's 83 units?
84.
84 units? I mean,
yeah.
that's big. I'm just wondering if maybe
Well,
if they scale it down, if people would be more.
The
I don't know that that's even on the
zoning
table, I'm
bylaw-
just,
The zoning bylaw says that if you have sufficient land relative to the
And they do.
number of
Yeah.
people that you're planning, 184 was it?
I think
It has to be a certain-
103 people, 84 units or
Units,
something
that's
like
right.
that.
Well,
yeah.
whatever that
More than one
combination
person.
is, they
Yeah.
do have sufficient land according to the bylaw.
Yeah, okay.
So they don't need to scale it down. And after all, this is a business proposition. This is something the town needs.
And that's what I think people forget. This is a private industry. The town is not in on this. I mean, the town is not supporting it. It's not a town-run project. It's a private company.
So it'll pay taxes.
Yes, it will. Sure.
Well, there's another.
And the other thing I don't think people are thinking about, and talk about traffic, is sufficient number of houses could be built on that property. And the people
Yeah.
that have bought this and are preparing this proposal own that land. So by right, they can put a number of houses in there, and what is that going to do for traffic? I mean, a residence takes, there's a lot of traffic coming and going between the,
2 cars per house.
and
At
it's not
minimum.
just that, it's
Yeah.
the yard men, it's the snow, it's just a whole bunch of, plus kids going to school, which is a factor.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I was going to say, they're going to build something on that property.
Yeah.
So it would be nice to see something that would benefit the community.
fits
that would fit.
the needs.
Yeah.
Something other than a housing
Yeah,
development.
Yeah.
in my opinion, but.
Of course, we're all talking to the choir here tonight.
Yeah, that is true.
Somebody said to me, I was sitting there and I was sitting between 2 ladies who were not thrilled with the project, and one of them says to me, "Are you in a butter?" And I said, "No, but I plan to be. I plan to live there."
I'm booking my room right now.
So, well, it'll be interesting. The hearing is the end of this month. I think it's the 26th
26.
at the high school.
Yeah.
And there was some question as to whether they were going to have it at the auditorium or in the gym, but it's somewhere at the high school.
Yeah, it's
right?
at the high school.
So that'll take care of that. Well, we'll see what happens as it goes. They need a special, why do they need a special permit for this?
It is in a single residence district, so therefore it does have to have a hearing, which is what they did have and are having. And there are other strictures when you do change the zoning bylaws for a special, this is a special thing, and therefore they don't need a variance, which is quite a different thing and much
Okay, that's what
much
I-
more difficult to get. Special permit just means they go through this process of hearings and feel out the residents and that kind of thing.
Kind of try to meet their
Exactly.
objections and so on. Well, it'll be an interesting situation as it goes along, and certainly that hearing on the 26th will be interesting. There's been 3 different flyers I've seen around town. Somebody's been leafleting the farmers market.
Yes.
I talked to that woman at the farmer's market.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens. Well, controversy over a church plan to serve the homeless in downtown Marblehead. Some residents around Mugford Street turned out for an informational meeting at the Unitarian Universalist Church. They will be there to learn more about the Family Promise Network, a program to bring homeless families to the church for overnights, dinners, and games. They need a temporary occupancy certificate from the town for that, and I don't think a decision has been made on that yet, right?
Not as far as I know, no.
Actually, it was the first time that the Unitarian Universalist Church's congregation and abutting neighbors had actually come face to face. All the other times had been basically them communicating through either the newspaper or letters to the editor or emails. But some of the concerns that they had were everything from whether their real estate would go down, whether smoking, what time parents would smoke outside, and sort of like when lights would be turned off at night.
So the fact that homeless people smoke, I mean, that's a pretty big assumption, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would think they couldn't afford to
I
smoke.
know, yeah,
could afford
seriously.
Given the price to
Where do the other people in
these
town
days.
smoke?
Did the informational meeting help? I mean, did you go away with the impression that the neighbors were okay?
I think that people were happy to. I guess you might call it a catharsis of some sort, where they kind of just heard everyone else, and I'm not really sure what walked away, but I think everyone kind of was happy that they actually got to meet face to face and talk about and sort of get more information. And if that was the case, if it was information, then I think the mission was accomplished.
And we've had some history of homeless in Marblehead, right?
Well, yes, we had, the motels that were being used over the years. We had a motel here in Marblehead. It was one of our B&Bs. And kids were involved and went to the school system, and people were very, very upset about it. It worked out okay. We didn't have the big onslaught that other communities were faced with. I don't know how many kids ended up in the school system, probably only 10 or 15. But yeah, they were, and I remember people came before the Board of Selectmen, and they were up in arms, and I had to sound off a little bit, because I felt we were pretty darn lucky to have this possibility to have these people here, that these children needed sunshine and fresh air and a lovely town to live in, if for not for a long time, but at least a little part of their lives.
And the difference is that program, like the families being placed in the motels, that's the state
That's
that was
right.
doing that. This is a private program. They're not chronically homeless people, so it's a little different. It's not the guy or the woman on the corner begging for quarters. I mean, these are families that may have lost their jobs or may have had a fire, or, and as Dave said once before, they don't have a safety net, and they need a helping hand. I mean, doesn't everybody need a helping hand once in a while? That's what they need.
So the takeaway from this is talk to your neighbors?
Yeah.
Outreach.
Yeah, that could have
Yeah.
bypassed a lot of the eyes there. It really could have.
The church made this decision over a year ago to enter into this program, and with very little fanfare. I think if they had just reached out to the neighbors right from the start and said, this is what we want to do, I think much of this would have been much ado about nothing.
Okay. Well, finally, what is happening to our infrastructure? A disabled man was tossed into Red's Pond after his wheelchair hit a defect on the walkway around the pond. Passers-by were quick to pull him and his motorized wheelchair out of the water. Town workers are on the scene quickly to make repairs, and officials tell me there is some more work to do around the pond, what they referred to as the deck. So it was a close call. But do you think it was a wake-up call?
Not in that instance, no, because I think that deck, so-called, is a piece of hot top, which is on an angle. The slant is 1 foot from the edge of it to the edge of the pond. Now that's a pretty big, steep pitch. And for someone to be in a motorized wheelchair, now I mean even on a bicycle, is a little chancy. I think they probably should take out that hot top, smooth out the bed and put in some, I mean that would be my suggestion. I'm not a contractor, I don't know about that stuff really, but just looking at it casually, put in some gravel. That's designed there so people can, the people that sail the boats on the pond, the model, and it's dry, it'd be dry on them, because they sail them rain or shine. And so it was really a convenience for them. It was never intended for anybody to use as for a motorized wheelchair. And the guy was gutsy to try to do it, but it was very, very risky, and he didn't use good judgment.
Well, this town was built before the revolution, right?
Yeah.
So does that make it harder to maintain? I mean, does it mean there are more
yeah.
places like that around town? And
Well, the pond's been there an awful long time.
Wow.
And it's very, very deep, and it's you know, a beautiful place to be. But and I took a walk around other ponds in town because I thought, well, you know, the Park and Rec has several ponds,
Sure.
and most of them don't have nearly as you couldn't possibly walk around or take a motorized wheelchair around Ware's Pond. I mean, it's meant for
Yeah.
hiking,
Yeah.
and this is more or less meant for that too. It's not meant for a lot of traffic.
It's part of the charm that's Marblehead.
Yeah.
And that's the I think that's the conflict that a lot of places have is there also have been advances in technology and like wheelchair technology and in prostheses. You know, a lot of people who you know, when a lot of these places were built, you would never think they would be able to use them, have the ability to use them now.
That's right.
And there's but that means they have to be changed to kind of meet that that change as well.
They're not exactly accessible.
Well, it's a big responsibility when you start. If you make it handicap accessible, now you've got some issues. And if you accept state or federal money for it, you really have.
Committed.
Yeah.
That has to be inspected. You're committed to a real process. This has never been put in that category. So
Well, speaking of that, a report on handicapped accessibility came out last week.
yeah,
How did we do?
there are a lot of issues.
Yeah.
A lot of issues on it, but I don't think there naturally would be. And I think that they're hammering away at those as they can. And we know that Abbott Hall, when they made the addition of the corrections to the tower, the money exceeded the amount of money that you could do it. Then you have it kicks in handicapped accessibility.
Forced to do it.
So there's handicap accessible now there, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's great.
And
The town
the